Hey guys, DX What Ifs here. And before we get into this what if, I would like to sincerely apologize from the bottom of my heart. Certain things in my life has been a hindrance to my hobby and I have not been able to focus on my channel. But don't worry, everything is fine now. And I'm ready to start uploading again. Now, today for the first time in forever. I'm bringing you a brand new what if I call Naruto, the village hidden in wave, or what if Naruto defected from the leaf and took over wave. With this idea, I really hope you guys enjoy. And be sure to let me know how you feel about this what if. But without further ado, let's get into this. Prologue intro. Naruto and Sasuke had just finished their fight at the Valley of the End, ending with a gaping hole near Naruto's heart, and a badly injured Sasuke knocked out lying next to him. He then struggles to his feet, as the Kyuubi is trying to heal the wound as best he can. He lifts himself, and looks towards Sasuke with anger in his eyes. A newfound hatred he never known he had for the damned Uchiha. He tried to kill me, he really tried to kill me, he thinks, gritting his teeth while clenching his fist tightly. But all of that subsides when his name is suddenly called by Kakashi. He looks to the top of Madara's statue, and sees a sad look on Kakashi's face, while Sakura has tears in her eyes, seeing Sasuke limp on the cold water. Kakashi-sensei, take me down there, please, she says, gripping the arm of his black shinobi bodysuit. Kakashi looks at her, knowing what this is all about, and sighs before nodding to her request. He picks her up on his back, and jumps down. He lands on the water in a crouch, as Sakura quickly dismounts him, and runs towards them. Sakura-chan, he says, thinking she was running to him, to thank him for granting her wish. But that thought vanished, as she runs past him, and straight to Sasuke. This shatters his thought process, as he slowly looks back at her, seeing her lift Sasuke in her arms, calling his name with tears streaming down her face. But he expected this reaction. This was her precious Sasuke after all. But he doesn't give up. He slowly walks up to her, as she suddenly stops the crying, feeling his presence behind her as she hears, I did what you asked. I stopped him from leaving, just like you told me to. He reaches out for her shoulder, hoping she would at least give him a nod. But he widens his eyes, as she smacks his hand away from her. She then stands with a look he never seen directed towards him before by her of all people. A look of undying hatred as she says, I told you to do one thing, Naruto. I told you to bring him back to me. And what do? Beat him within an inch of his life. Do you see what you've done to him? You've hurt him. You've hurt my Sasuke. But, Sakura-chan, he tries to come to his own defense, but he gets smacked across his face, leaving him speechless as she continues. I can't even send you to do one thing. You ruin everything you touch. You're worthless. You're nothing but a demon. Sakura, that's enough, Kakashi shouts, as she keeps her cold glare planted onto Naruto. Hearing this from her, the girl he loved in every moment of his life just tore his world apart, all for a traitor. And this broke in him. His mind goes blank as his body goes limp. His blonde hair shadows over his eyes as he begins to shake, thinking of why does he even try? Why does he go so far for people that doesn't give a damn about him? The village's people hates him for something he can't control. Every waking moment he is shunned for being a supposed demon by people who can't tell the difference between a kid and a beast. This was his breaking point, and both Kakashi and Sakura sees this, as her glare begins to fade into a look of regret. She knows she overreacted. Sasuke was still breathing. He was fine. She was just torn seeing her beloved so hurt, and wanted to take her anger out on someone. But now, the feeling of guilt begins to creep up her spine, as she begins to speak. Naruto, I didn't save it, Sakura. She flinches at this, hearing him talk to her in a tone she thought of as impossible to come from him. A tone devoid of any other emotion except anger and pain. Every day, every single day, I try to work through the pain, the hate, the glares, the words that make me feel smaller than everyone else. I try and work through it, Sakura. But no matter how hard I work, no matter how hard I try, it's never enough, is it? Kakashi gains a saddened look. Knowing this was bound to happen sooner or later. The shell he hides his. Is it? Sakura flinches at his angered tone, seeing his eyes filled with fury and hatred towards her. Towards everything he has ever known. Seeing nothing but pain, hurt, suffering and anger behind his shadowy blue eyes. You can't even answer that for me. No one can, which proves to me that I truly have no one. I never did in my entire life. But I still fight for you. I fight for all of you and look what it got me. He says, widening his unzipped jumpsuit. As Sakura widens her eyes in horror seeing the gaping hole in the center of his chest. Being enveloped and healed by Kurama's demon chakra. This is what I get, for fighting for a village that doesn't give a damn about me. They always hated me, even going so far as to hurt me. Did you know that, Sakura? He says, gaining a crazed look on his face. As she begins to feel a bit of fear in her heart. Stepping back from him, seeing his mind is slowly becoming unstable. I was always the village's punching bag and I never fought back. Maybe because I was too nice or too afraid. I let them walk all over me. Hoping that it would quench their hatred towards me, but it never ended. I was all alone, suffering by myself with no one to call friends. No one to call family. No one to call my own. And you were my breaking point. You hurt me, Sakura. You hurt me worse than they ever could. He then takes off his orange jacket and throws it into the water like it never meant anything to him, before he looks at her. With a now blank expression, with the absence of emotion as he says. I loved you, Sakura. I would have done anything for you. Fought for you. Bled for you. I would have given my own life if it meant that you would get to live. But now, I can't stand you. I can't stand being around you. When I look at you, all I see is the Uchiha traitor's bitch. Not the girl I loved. Not the girl I called friend. This brought her to tears. She doesn't know why, but this was eating at her heart. Breaking it piece by piece with every word he spat at her. She places her hands over her chest, leaking an endless stream of tears. Disappointed in herself for what she has done, knowing what he has been through. And what made it worse for her, is that she was a part of his torture. Naruto, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. She says, sobbing while looking down. Feeling her heated and watery eyes leak emotions she never knew she had for Naruto. But Naruto slowly walks up to her, and places his left arm on her shoulder. Letting it hang as he gets closer to her ear on the opposite side, and mutters these words. Don't apologize, Sakura. Because from this day going forward in both of our miserable lives. You mean nothing to me. She widens her eyes, before feeling a tight grip on her shoulder. And a knee being slammed into her gut. Kakashi widens his eyes in disbelief. But had no time to think, as Naruto pushes Sakura to the side by her head and turns quickly. Tossing a kunai directly at Kakashi's head. But he takes out his own and blocks easily. Then suddenly he gains a sense of shock, as he sees him. With blood-red eyes, and sharp fox-like slits in the center of them. As he soars with a flying kick towards Kakashi with his right. But he blocks, and gets blasted back by the amount of force he put into that attack. And collides with the concrete of Madara's statue. He was in total disbelief, and didn't want to believe what was right in front of him. The real Naruto. Naruto lands as Kakashi falls to the ground. Feeling his broken ribs rubbing together against his organs as he spits blood in his mask. Naruto then slowly walks to Kakashi with both hands in his pocket. And crouches next to his head, without an ounce of remorse as he takes his left hand from out of that pocket. And grips the Hatake's silver hair. You were my favorite, Kakashi. You did your best to protect me. And for that, you have my undying respect. He says in a monotone. As this made Kakashi feel a sick sense of happiness as Naruto drops his head onto the water. He then struggles to look up as he walks past Sakura, who is lifting herself with struggle, laying on her side. She looks towards him, and sees him hovering over Sasuke on the left side. And Naruto, I'm sorry. Please, forgive me. She begs, still leaking tears of guilt and heartbreak, despite the aching pain in her stomach. Feeling like everything that led up to this was her fault. Naruto looks at her, without pity or sadness. Nothing can be seen behind his shadowy blue eyes. Before he looks back to Sasuke, who is finally coming to his senses, and crouches down next to him. Dope. He says in a scratchy tone, when suddenly, Naruto quickly reaches for his left eye. And snatches it from his socket as Sasuke feels a shock of pain through his body. screaming in agony as he clutches his face. Sasuke. Sakura screams, reaching out towards the both of them, falling deeper and deeper into despair. All because she loves a traitor. Now, we're even. Dope. He says mockingly with a wicked grin on his face. Slowly lifting himself with a dark chuckle as Sasuke writhes in pain. I'll kill you. I'll kill you, bastard. But Naruto doesn't react to his feeble threats. And kicks him dead in his temple with the Kyuubi's chakra. Putting the Avenger in a comatose state. And Naruto, I'm sorry. I failed you. He whispers, not getting it out fully. As he now struggles to stand. Sakura is hanging her head, whimpering and drowning in her sorrows. Not even wanting to look up at the event happening before her. As she hears. I have betrayed my comrades Kakashi. I guess I'm trash now, eh? He says, raising an eyebrow with mockery. As Kakashi finally gets to his feet, and narrows his eyes. Still being a ninja of Konoha above all, and says. You. Daughter worse than trash. Naruto grins, and gives an amused chuckle towards the copy ninja. Until Kakashi adds. But you, Naruto Uzumaki, can still be saved. And I will not give up on you, never. Naruto is taken aback, hearing this from his former sensei. Making him raise an eyebrow, before laughing maniacally at him. Sakura looks up, still not believing this was her knuckle-headed friend. This couldn't be the boy who used to play pranks on the village just for attention. The boy who would constantly ask her out on dates. This wasn't him, it just wasn't. And it hurts her, thinking that it was all along. After Naruto's crazed laughter, he looks at Kakashi and says with a grin. This is why I like you, Kakashi. You don't know when to quit. Ha 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 ha. After, he calms himself. Ridding himself of the comedy gold. And turns, while reaching for his left eye. He then rips the sight sphere from his head with a wince. And replaces it with the Uchiha traitor's eye. Dropping his own into the water. Shocking Kakashi and Sakura. After, he sends chakra to that eye. As it slowly and surely, becomes his own. Then, he turns to them and opens both eyes. To see he still had those two sky blue eyes of his, which shocks Kakashi even more. But holds his thoughts in the back of his mind, and sees him reach for his band before roughly removing it from his head. This is a mistake, Naruto. Think about what you're doing. Kakashi shouts, trying to reason with the angered blonde. But he just scoffs, quickly taking out a kunai. And slashes the Konoha leaf symbol in half before slowly holding it up to them. I have officially defected from Konoha. And I will wear this band with pride. To show all Konoha scum that I am no longer weak. They do not own me any longer. He then puts it back on, shifting the band to the right of his head. And says. And if it's a problem. Then I'll be glad to have fun with you lot. This turned both Sakura and Kakashi's worlds upside down. Thinking of the boy they thought they knew, and sees him in his true form now. Proving that they've really never known anything about him at all to begin with. Their hearts ache, as they see him begin to turn and walk away towards Hashirama's statue. Seeing this, makes Sakura's heart beat at an alarming rate. With a fear that is worse than intimidation. The fear of loss, as she reaches out to him shouting his name. Repeatedly, hoping he would stop. But he didn't, he kept going. Not giving them a second glance, before executing a full-on sprint up Hashirama's statue at a fast pace. And soars in the sky, landing on its head in a crouch. Even then, he didn't even stop to say his last spoken words to them. And leaves from sight. Naruto. She shouts, sobbing while softly planting a fist onto the water. Kakashi, however, keeps his composure. He looks over to Sakura, and gives a look of pity towards the girl. He weakly walks over to the girl, holding his stomach. And places a hand on her shoulder, as she suddenly gets up. And hugs Kakashi roughly as he winces. She repeatedly apologizes, feeling herself being broken apart from the inside. Cursing herself mentally for being such a bitch to him. And all Kakashi could do, was comfort her in her time of need. 1 week later. It took them a while, but they made it back to Konoha in a week. They showed up at a hospital and put Sasuke there. He was apparently comatose by that kick, given the fact that Naruto pushed the Kyuubi's demon chakra into his foot. The impact mildly fractured the left side of his skull, but the nurses say he would be perfectly fine in a couple of weeks. Kakashi was easily healed from the minor fractures in his ribs. And was ready to go within the same hour. After, they go to the Hokage's tower to meet Tsunade, who had no prior knowledge of this, and comes to her office to explain. They enter, and she looks up from her paperwork, being met with downhearted and guilty looks on their faces, which earns a raised eyebrow from her as she asks, I assume Sasuke is back in custody. Or am I wrong? No. You are correct, Lady Hokage. Then what's with the looks? And where's Naruto? She asks, getting flinches at the mention of his name, which instantly sends negative possibilities to her mind as she quickly stands with urgency. He isn't. No, he's not dead. Kakashi says in a reassuring tone, still bearing a tired and saddened expression. This brings relief to her heart, but another lingering assumption crosses her mind as she widens her eyes and says, Did he? Her voice was full of shock and disbelief, as the fact hits her, given they have no answer to her half-spoken question. And slowly, anger begins to fill her soul as she clenches her fist and slams it into her desk, forcing everything to fly off and scatter with Shizune, Kakashi and Sakura flinching at the sound. Tell me what happened, right now. Or I swear I'll have both your asses suspended. They stand in silence after her outburst, feeling every emotion hit them all at once. Until Sakura falls to her knees, and begins to cry, gaining everyone's attention in the room as she says while sobbing. It was me, Lady Tsunade. Sniffle, it was my fault that he left. I hit him, yelled at him, hurt him for doing what I asked of him. And I am so sorry. This all happened because of me. She says, whimpering with her hands planted onto the ground, letting tears of pain leak onto the wooden floor. She hangs her head in shame, soul full of regret as Tsunade begins to fume, but calms herself, seeing a glimpse of herself inside Sakura. After, she walks over to Sakura and stands over her with a stern glare. Sakura Haruno, on your feet. Sakura looks up in shock, before wiping her tears while standing in front of her. I am not happy with what I just heard. You of all people should know what that kid has been through in this village. Yes, and I am the most guilty. I shouldn't have said those things to him. He didn't deserve any of it. She says, still wiping tears from her face. I'm glad that you realize your mistakes. But tell me this, Sakura, are you still in love with the Uchiha? She says firmly, getting a reaction as Sakura widens her eyes and gains a look of uncertainty afterwards. Tsunade expected this, and sighs. If you can't figure out your priorities, then you are not fit to be a ninja any longer. You're suspended until further notice. This shocks Sakura, as she hangs her head, feeling her headband being taken from her before Tsunade says, You may leave, civilian. This sinks into her core, as she sadly turns, taking the walk of shame through the doors of her office. Shizune and Kakashi watch with pity as the doors close shut, hearing her sniffling whimpers all the way down the hall, until it couldn't be heard anymore. After, Tsunade turns to Kakashi and says with a glare, Do you have any plans to get him back? Or are you gonna let him leave and get himself killed? As a matter of fact, I do. I had a whole week to think of multiple plans to bring him back. Hearing this, she lightens her glare at Kakashi, before going back over to her desk and plops down into her chair. Alright, these plans better be good, Kakashi. Kakashi nods, and begins explaining. 1. Was to incorporate Danzo's route to track him down and bring him back unharmed. Tsunade is instantly taken aback by this, before dismissing this plan of operation off the jump. Not gonna happen. That bastard always has ulterior motives when it comes to power. Or the loss of it, so I won't let him or his slaves lay a finger on Naruto. Kakashi expected this, which is why he mentioned it as the first option. Okay. The second is we send a team of tracker nin to bring him back unharmed. We have highly skilled Chunin heirs and close friends of his who wouldn't think of harming him. It would be our best option, he says, as she begins to contemplate the idea, before blowing that one down as well. You may be right, Kakashi, but we also can't risk the heirs encountering B rank or higher level threats along the way. That much loss would be detrimental to the village's shinobi forces and the parents. So what's next? Kakashi knew this was a possible response as well. So he decides to break out the final option, one she can't refuse, and says, Lastly, we wait 6 years until we know our prodigies are fully prepared to take on the dangers of the world. Until then, we train them. Train them like they've never been trained before. And once their training is complete, we'll send Elite Jonin as captains of the tracker team to retrieve Naruto and bring him home. This one spoke to Tsunade even more than the last one. But still has the safety of her favorite knucklehead in mind, saying, "That may work, Kakashi. But what if he already ends up dead by then? All of it would be for nothing," she says with a serious look, but Kakashi gains a serious expression as well as his eyes sharpen. "You're wrong, Tsunade. What? Do you know Naruto? He wouldn't survive 3 days out there." "I wouldn't be so sure, Lady Hokage," he says, as she raises her eyebrow, hearing the sincerity in his words, and asks, "How do you know that to be true?" Kakashi then sighs, gaining a sad look thinking of that cursed day Sakura decided to choose violence over a traitor. "Well, I'll start with this. You might wanna follow me," he says, as Tsunade gains a skeptical look, but obliges as she stands and begins following him along with Shizune to the hospital. Kakashi slides the door open for both ladies. As they are met with Sakura, who is sitting by the hospital bed Sasuke is locked down to, before looking at the bandage wrapped over his left eye, stained with dried blood, surprising Tsunade and Shizune. "What exactly happened, Kakashi?" Tsunade says, turning back to him after observing his condition. "Naruto lashed out. He got tired of everyone's abuse and took it out on us. He hurt Sakura and ripped out Sasuke's eye for his Sharingan, and he used the power of the Kyuubi against me, fracturing my ribs. To show us, he was officially defected from the Hidden Leaf, even going as far as to cut the Konoha symbol on his guard, and displayed it to us, showing us how much hatred he was hiding behind his smile. And not to mention, he did it all with a hole in his chest inflicted by Sasuke. He used a lightning technique I taught him for quick assassinations to try and kill Naruto. And I now deeply regret my decision." Tsunade and Shizune widens their eyes in disbelief as Sakura begins to tear up, hearing the reminder of her mistake, while Tsunade and Shizune are trying to register what they just heard. "So, he did this. But that isn't possible. He would never betray his friends like that." "Yeah, I thought the exact same thing, Tsunade. Until it happened. He was so angry, it was an anger I never seen in him before. This was the first time I had no idea how to deal with him. It was all so sudden." This was too shocking for Tsunade, as she walks over to an empty chair against the wall, a foot away from Sasuke's bed near a corner, and sits down. All this time, he wasn't happy at all. It was a mask, she says, beginning to shed tears as she covers her face, shaking from the overbearing guilt. Shizune sees this, and quickly comforts her as she says softly, "It isn't your fault, Tsunade-sama. It is Shizune. I could have done something to help him if only I could see past his facade. I could have comforted him, for him when he needed me the most. But I was too busy drinking my problems away," she yells, with a scratchy and torn voice as she moves her hands up to wipe her eyes, feeling sorry for herself for not being there for him. "I understand what you are feeling to an extent. But it doesn't mean you should sit here and feel sorry for yourself. If you really want to help him, now's the time to do so. He needs you more than anything right now, even if he doesn't know it yet. So what you're gonna do is pick yourself up, and act like the Hokage of the Leaf." At that, Tsunade looks at her, and gains a smirk, ridding herself of tears as she stands. "You telling me what to do, that's funny," she says, gaining a smile from Shizune as she stands as well. "All right, Kakashi, we'll go through with this plan. Operation Save Naruto Uzumaki starts now." At that, they all walk out of Sasuke's room. But Tsunade suddenly stops, and looks at Sakura, who is blankly staring into the foot of Sasuke's bed still having wet cheeks, before sighing, and leaves her to her thoughts. A few hours later, Shizune has gathered all of the Konoha 12, now 10, as they all are in Tsunade's office with their senseis, curious of what's going on. "I don't mean to step out of line, Hokage-sama, but what exactly are we doing here?" "Yeah, we don't have missions until next week." Tsunade gains a tick, with her hands intertwined in front of her mouth as she says, "If you all would shut your mouths and let me talk, you'd understand why you're here." Hearing this, all the Chunin instantly get quiet as Asuma says, "Sorry about my big mouths for students here. But they are asking the golden questions." Tsunade sighs at this, before gaining a serious look which catches all of their attention as she begins to say, "Alright, straight to business. As of last week, sigh. Naruto Uzumaki has been confirmed to defect from the Hidden Leaf. And has gone rogue. With Naruto. He is limping, bloody with a body covered in cuts and bruises. Walking through countless bodies of Konoha Root Anbu who was sent by Danzo to eliminate him for his betrayal. He is holding his stomach with his right arm while the Kyuubi is still trying to heal the patch in his chest while healing the rest of the wounds sustained during the battle for survival, but comes to a severe conclusion. Naruto, you have too many wounds inflicted on your person. I don't think you'll make it too far." Hearing this in his mind, he grinds his teeth with the will of fire still burning in his heart as he says weakly, "I've already made it this far, Kurama. I can't, die now." He says, still limping with no particular objective to reach. Now that he is a rogue, Kurama feels his determination to live, and become stronger. So he can be able to protect himself, and rid the world of sick individuals. This is what's really keeping him alive, and he grew to respect that about Naruto over this week. But suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted by feeling Naruto's knees buckle. As he falls onto his hands and knees, and spits up a severe amount of blood. "No. Damn it, kid. Don't you dare die on me." He roars in his mind, as the only words Naruto mutters is, "Naruto, I don't plan to." And falls forward onto his side, as the light fades from his eyes. Kid. Kurama screams, before gritting his teeth while growling. Before saying, "I have no choice now." He says, as he urgently slams his hands together in the mindscape. And begins to charge his body with dangerous amounts of Biju demon chakra. Coating his body in its powerful glory. Until, it suddenly upgrades to yokai demonic aura, turning black and dark purple with red wispy strands floating within it as it grows bigger all over his body. And in the hole of his chest, a second blackened heart with bright red arteries slowly begins to form while closing up the wound in his chest. While that happens, his hair becomes blackened as well and he is left with only blonde tips. His skin gains hue and turns to a light brown. His whiskers get bushier, his fangs get sharper, his blue eyes gain slits and he gains permanent claws. His body gets tougher and more chiseled. And he grows a few inches into 5 feet 4. After, the demon transformation is completed. Leaving Kurama in a weakened and frail state, as he says, "Kid, when I wake, you better thank me for saving your ass." Very tiredly, before he yawns and proceeds to sleep. Not planning to wake up anytime soon. Hokage's office. The teams are all in shock of what they've just heard. "You mean, the dead last defected?" Hinata was the most shocked out of all of them. As she begins to say, "No, he wouldn't." She begins to tear up, with Neji beginning to comfort his cousin. She hugs onto him as she begins to cry in his chest. Why would he abandon us like this? This was his home. How could he do this? It's simple. But first, I want you all to truthfully answer this question. If you were born in a village that hated you for something you weren't able to control, beat you, tormented you, and shunned you for what you hold inside, would you want to stay? Or would you want to leave? Tsunade rebuttals, narrowing her eyes at all of them. They wonder why this was asked, not knowing the reason. Until Shikamaru comes forth. If you all don't get it, it's because Naruto held the demon fox inside of him. And he was obviously hiding all of his pain inside. He says, saddening himself with the ending. As he looks down with an upset frown. Everyone looks at Shikamaru in shock, as Kiba asks. How do you know that? Isn't the Kyuubi dead? Didn't the Yondaime kill him? I thought so as well. But the information must have been censored for a reason I have yet to discover. But nevertheless it was obvious from the jump. No one liked him. They always laid hands on him, calling him a demon. And they shunned him whenever he was around. I don't get how you all could be so stupid. Alright, that's enough, Shikamaru. Asuma says, comforting him with a hand on his shoulder as he continues to look down. They all then look towards Tsunade for confirmation. As she nods in silence. That's when they all begin to reflect on what their parents told them, and they begin to feel horrible at how badly they treated him, minus Shikamaru and Choji. Oh my god. I didn't. Ino says, shedding a tear of guilt as she holds in the rest of the water streams that threaten to fall. As Hinata begins to cry once again while Neji caresses her hair in a brotherly fashion. They all begin to feel bad, knowing that they are half the reason he decided to leave. Now that you all know, we can discuss why you're all here. She says, as they all begin to turn with saddened and disappointed looks still shown on their faces. Now, the reason is. You all have a new mission. And that is to set out, find Naruto. And bring him back to the Leaf. Where he belongs. What? You expect him to come back after what he's been through? After what we've done? There's no point. The damage has already been dealt. Kiba shouts, beginning to leak tears with an angered expression. Gaining winces from all the senseis and Chunin in the room. But Tsunade raises a hand to calm him. I understand your guilt. I bear it as well. But, if you all truly feel as guilty as you seem, you would stop at nothing to bring him home. And show him that he was never alone. Show him that you all truly cared. She says, as they all gain a sense of determination in their eyes after a few moments of thought. You know what? You're right. He's our friend. And we won't let him go down a dark path. We'll bring him home kicking and screaming if we have to. Kiba shouts, pumping his fist. As Ino jumps in. Yeah. Rock Lee, yes, I sense that the will of fire still burns within my rival. We will save him. Choji, all right. Let's do this. Tenten, we won't stop. No matter what. They say, all getting motivated to give Naruto what he never had. As Tsunade smiles happily at them along with their senseis, before quieting them down so she can continue. I'm glad you're all enthusiastic. But, this will take time if we want to go through with this. This shoots their determination in the heart as Kiba is taken aback. Why? We're ready, aren't we? Not yet. You all need more time to train yourselves before you leave those gates. You never know what's out there ready to take you all down. And I can't have that, neither can your parents. Hearing this, they all begin thinking about her words. And agrees with her logic, but Ino asks worriedly. But, what about Naruto? I don't think he'll make it out there. But Tsunade instantly counters her assumption. Don't worry about Naruto. He has hidden a lot from us during the time we've known him. He's not who we think he is, and you all need to prepare for that when the time comes. She says, narrowing her eyes sharply at them. Subliminally letting them know how dire the situation is. And they all see that, seeing the truthful glint in her eyes. Putting them on edge about Naruto. What do you mean? Lady Hokage-sama. Firstly, he injured his teammates. Including Kakashi. Without batting an eye. This shocks them, not knowing Naruto to do such a thing. But given his situation, it isn't hard to believe. Secondly, he stole Sasuke's eye. To gain power. What? Kurenai says, widening her eyes at the thought. Along with the rest of the teams in the room. No, that's not. Believe it or not, but I saw what Naruto can truly do to a person. He is dangerous. And we need to prepare, effective immediately. Is that understood? They all get over their shock after a moment of deep contemplating and they nod, with Hinata reluctantly nodding to her as well. Good. Now, Jonin senseis. You will train your students for 6 years. Get all the help you can get from other Jonins if you have to. Because I know Naruto won't just be sitting around. Asuma. Yes, Hokage. Kurenai. Yes, Hokage. Guy. Don't you worry, Lady Hokage. And Kakashi nods to her. Tsunade. Now that this is all clear. You are all dismissed. At that, everyone begins to leave with their thoughts running rampant. Knowing that they aren't going to listen to their parents for a while. After what they've just heard. 20 minutes later. Tsunade enters Sasuke's hospital room with Shizune and Ino, who wanted to see for herself. And to her surprise, everything Tsunade said wasn't a lie. Seeing Sakura resting at the foot of Sasuke's bed, crying in her sleep which saddens her. She walks over to her, and comforts her. Rubbing her back with soft circling strokes. As Tsunade walks over to Sasuke. Looking down at him with disgust visible in her demeaning glare. She then hovers both hands over the side of his face. And begins healing him, emitting powerful green chakra that quickly mends his skull and reforms his eye. Afterwards, he instantly begins to twitch his eyes and grunt in minor pain. Alright, I'm leaving now. As soon as you leave here, Ino, you will begin training with Enko. Understood. Ino looks up at her, and nods with a serious expression. After, Tsunade walks out of the room, leaving them with the traitor. A few minutes later, Sasuke suddenly opens his eyes, groaning from a headache, and slowly sits up. Hearing this, Sakura instantly wakes, feeling the bed shuffle as she looks at Sasuke with tear-filled eyes. Sasuke! She shouts, as she suddenly latches onto him. While Ino looks at Sasuke with mixed emotions. Sasuke is in a blank state of mind, not hearing anything that's going on around him, until he suddenly gets flashes of what Naruto did to him. Remembering the pain, and the bloodlust he felt from a person he thought was devoid of it. And it angers him quickly. He begins to grit and clench his fists, while Sakura continues to hug his neck. Until, Sasuke gets tired of it as he uses his free hand to push her away. Gaining a shocked reaction from Ino as she quickly catches Sakura, letting her chair fall onto the ground. What the hell is wrong with you? Ino shouts, as Sasuke looks at her with an angered expression. Shut up. Why are both of you even here? Why are you the ones I have to see when I wake? This shocks Sakura and Ino, never seeing this side of Sasuke before. And it really shook them up. I just wanted to see if you were okay, Sasuke-kun. Sakura says, standing and facing him with a saddened expression. I don't need you to check up on me. I don't need you for anything. He shouts with a scowl, struggling to break the restraint on his arm. Sasuke-kun, but I. You what? Love me? He says sarcastically, before he begins to burst out in laughter. Sasuke, don't make me laugh. I would never love someone as pathetic as you, Sakura. Especially you, Ino. You're just as annoying. Always asking me on dates, knowing full well that I don't have any feelings towards you. Not even a fraction. As a matter of fact, I hate you two the most. So just do me a favor, and get over me already. This, broken and shattered both of their hearts. They couldn't believe what they just heard from the one they truly loved. As tears begin rolling down their cheeks, and their hearts begin to ache as his hurtful words echo through their minds. Until Ino was the first, that decided that she had enough. Fine. Die for all I care, you pathetic traitor. Saying with boiling rage in her tone, before marching out of the room. But Sakura, still stubborn to the fact. Not wanting to believe anything he says. Sasuke, you're just confused right now. And, I understand. Sakura, leave my room. Now, I don't like you. I don't love you. And I never will. You mean nothing to me. Hearing this, for the second time, broke her. The light fades from her light green eyes, as the tears stop streaming from her face. Her expression becomes dull before being replaced with undying anger for him. I don't know why I even try with you. You ruined my friendship. Broke my heart countless times, no matter how much I try. No matter how much I told myself I cared. But no more. I won't be blinded by my false reality any longer. And continue to tell myself that I love you. Because now I realize that I never did in the first place. You are the one who truly means nothing to me. She says, glaring at him with true hatred in her eyes. Only gaining a small chuckle from him. But surprisingly, she chuckles herself. As Sasuke looks over to her with a raised eyebrow. What else did I expect from you? You hold nothing but selfishness and hatred. I'm your heart. Like the bastard traitor you are. So do me a favor, and rot in hell along with your vengeance. At that, she walks out of the room, feeling like a brand new person. While Sasuke looks back over at the restraints and sees chakra restriction seals engraved in the chain's metal. He then grits, ripping off the bandage over his eye. Before laying back in the bed letting out a breath. Sakura leaves the room, and takes a turn. When suddenly she sees Tsunade and Ino waiting at the door for her. And she appears to have her headband hanging from her left hand with her arms crossed. Tsunade, now, do you see Sakura? Sakura nods with a neutral expression. That bastard can't be saved. I thought I would be able to change him. I thought I could be the light that overshines his darkness. But now I know that I can't. And I don't intend on doing so any longer. Then take this back, Sakura. And become my apprentice. We both will train as hard as we can, and save Naruto. she says, handing her back her headband. Sakura nods, and takes it, tying it around her head with a determined look on her face. Ready to become a better version of herself. A fully fledged Koinuichi. To Naruto. Naruto opens his eyes quickly, as they flash a bright purple for only a moment. Before going back to its original sea blue fox-like state, he instantly goes to feel the center of his sternal area, and widens his eyes, feeling not only one heartbeat, but two. What the hell happened to me? He whispers, standing to his feet slowly and with struggle. He looks at his hands, seeing his skin has darkened, and his nails are now sharp claws. He doesn't know what happened, or how he got like this. But something tells him that it was the fox inside of him as he places his hand to the seal that now reveals itself. Kurama. He calls, hoping to get an answer or explanation. But he gets nothing. He tries to link their minds together so they may speak. But all he hears is his snoring. Which proves to him even more that he did this to him. He saved his life. But then again, he told him once before that if he dies, he will as well. So Naruto doesn't read into it for too long, still feeling grateful for what he has done. Besides that, his thoughts clear. And he finds time to observe his surroundings. Seeing the forest of Konoha move slower as his vision pans. He hears the rustling of bushes, animals passing by, the movement of all plant life. Much more clearer. He feels the breeze of the wind, gliding across his skin with a more enhanced touch. As he looks down at his body while leveling his forearms. He clenches his fists repeatedly, feeling the unusual and dark power coursing through his coils. And gains a happy grin with furrowed eyebrows. I have to say, this is the best I've ever felt, ever. He thinks, as he looks to a poor and unfortunate tree. And faces it with a now serious and content gaze. Now, let's test this power theory. He says, before entering a stance as he pulls back his fist. Suddenly feeling wind chakra rapidly accumulate immense air pressure which circles his fist as well as his wrist. Just by thinking of it, before he lunges a fist at his intended target. It hits, and he widens his eyes as it rips through the tree. Jumping upwards along with the rest that had their cores reduced to splinters. Naruto looks at his hand, with wide eyes. In disbelief of the power he was given. Before clenching his fists with a determined look. Today is the day that I perfect myself. And I'll do anything to achieve my goal. I won't be trampled over any longer. He says, before lowering his fist. And dashing towards the southeast. To be continued. Thank you all for coming back to my channel, and again. I do apologize for my 1 year and some change hiatus. But don't worry, DX is back and ready to start things up once again. Feel free to like and subscribe, comment the what ifs you would like me to do next. And I'll see you on the next one. DX out.